Like, I don't think Grant Calcaterra has to be out there on the field for as much as he is
I
run
agree with
blocking
that.
when he's
Yeah,
terrible, and that
I
means
agree.
that you're avoiding turnovers. Like, that's not the offense has like room to be better, while you can still also play a style where you avoid turnovers.
Let's go to BLG. Joining us right now, Brandon Lee Gowton joins us here on Birds 365 on a Wednesday edition. You can follow him at Brandon Gowton. Read all his work at Bleeding Green Nation. BLG, never a dull moment in Eagle Land. How you doing, my friend?
Never a dull moment. Team is 8-2, and there are so many things to talk
Number
about.
one seed, favorite for the Super Bowl on most betting markets, and everybody thinks they stink. I don't know, BLG. I think this fan base may have crossed the line into full-fledged, whether you want to call it Bill Russell Celtics spoiled. I don't want to go that much when it comes to dynasties, but this is a good football team, and they do it. You probably heard me there. I think you were in the green room unconventionally.
Mm-hmm.
But does that mean it's bad? Unconventional doesn't mean it has to be bad.
So I think you do need to zoom out and look at the big picture and be, appreciative if you're an Eagles fan of, what the team is doing, what they've done, what this is like historically. I mean, they're on track to repeat as division champs for the first time in 21 years, like not to be taken for granted. At the same time, I think it's also fair to sit here and be like, this doesn't feel great. This doesn't feel as good as it should feel. I think there's like truth to that. I don't think you have to like watch the game, be like, what the heck afterwards, and then be like, well, everything is fine just because they're winning. I can't, complain at all. I think people shouldn't have to ignore like what there's like, is this team passing the eye test? They're not entirely. No, it's
Well,
not as simple as yeah,
offensively,
exactly.
I think the team passes the eye test.
I don't. The offense does not. To me.
Well, well, one thing, and I brought up, and I want to hear your thought. At some point, I've already gotten to that point, but I think more people need to get to the point that the two perceived biggest playmakers on this team, for whatever reason, and I don't know, I just brought up Saquon, but also AJ, might be injury, might be banged up. For whatever reason, they're not performing the way they performed in the past. For AJ, for years, and for Saquon, certainly last year was going to be tough to live up to it. But as one of our commenters just said, look, he was on some pretty crappy teams with the Giants and some pretty bad offensive lines, and he was better than he is right now. When you have those two guys with those two reputations not living up to their reputations, I get everybody wants to blame the coaches. I get that part, but to me, it's players first, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And I think those two guys are not playing up to their reputations. Am I wrong?
I think less so with Saquon. I still believe he looks good to me, and it's just like I don't know why, but they just cannot get it going for him. I think defenses are obviously more keyed in on him when he's in the game than they are with Tank Bigsby. Although they should start to be more keyed in because
pay attention to Tank.
He's running really well. But I mean, those things to me like explain why the offense isn't number one in the NFL, absolute juggernaut. I think that's fair. I don't think they explain why the offense looks like what it is here. I think there's room for them to look better than they are where they are right now, while also still not being, like again, the best unit in the NFL by far. I think there are things that we could see the coaching staff help out with more to get more. I find it very hard to believe like the coaching staff has an orange in their hands and they're like squeezing all the juice they possibly can out of that orange. I still think there's a lot of juice to squeeze there.
Yeah, I think they've just dumbed it down to don't turn it over. I mean, and I get it. John's right. They're 40-2. I think Nick is honestly correct to block out the noise, but you're right, BLG. It's just frustrating to watch sometimes. BLG, what'd you make of the D Gunn report earlier this week about Jalen Hurts and some of the things he had to say?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we all know Derek Gunn is well connected. You'd be remiss to think otherwise. So I don't doubt he's hearing that. And it is in line with what we have been hearing in other places with Diana Rossini talking about how multiple offensive players are frustrated. It falls in line with what Jeff McLean had said about in his podcast that he did last week on Uncovering the Birds about how, he basically informed opinion that, AJ's biggest frustration probably lies with how Jalen plays the game. So it's not coming out of nowhere. Same time, like I think it's a little bit unfair to Jalen Hurts when you look at his track record. We're talking about the reigning Super Bowl MVP here. It doesn't mean he's above criticism, but it's like you kind of have to put it in perspective. And also kind of when we talk about Jalen and him saying the offense looks like how it wants, it's going to look like what he wants to look like. At the same time, he makes the straight jacket comments after the NFC Championship game last year. It's a weird thing to parse through. I will say
conflicting comments though, hasn't he? Like the Pam Oliver, he's like, we got to stop playing to lose. But he also said last year, it's going to look how Jalen Hurts wants it to look. So it's like, all right, I got both sides here. I don't know, you know what I mean?
It's a weird thing to parse through. I will say, I think something that people kind of like didn't take the right way from what D-Gun said is D-Gun invoked the name of Carson Wentz. And what Derek Gunn, this is my opinion, I can't speak for D-Gun, but my interpretation of his comments was not saying Jalen Hurts literally is the spitting image of Carson Wentz. Like that's not, obviously Jalen's way more accomplished than Carson was. That's not what was being said. I think my interpretation, again, of what that comparison was made to is the fact that Carson Wentz, and when things went wrong here in Philadelphia, Carson held an outsized influence in that building. He had like way too much power than he really should have had. And it was to the detriment of the team ultimately and the detriment of the offense. And I wonder, I guess, if D-Gun is trying to get to something there where, and to me, that's not just a quarterback problem, by the way, at that point. Because the same organization is allowing the quarterback to kind of overstep and have too much power. And I get it. It's hard because they have a lot of, natural power as, the big money.
Yeah. That would be my pushback on that. Like what star quarterback doesn't have a lot of power?
Sure.
I mean, that to me is baked into it.
While it's winning and has created angst in the locker room. And that is something that you have to take into account.
But I think the best organizations are like ones who can like kind of reel that in a bit. I think like you look at some level, it's not perfect, but like the Patriots with Tom Brady, or to use a different sport analogy, like LeBron James on the Heat, like Pat Riley, has like that kind of credence to other organizations that might not, and it can kind of put his foot down a little bit more than certain other teams can. And by the way, those are some of the best years of LeBron's career. So I do think there's something to be said for, like an ownership and a structure that can kind of, put their foot down at times and try to steer the ship in what's best for the team and the organization and not just catering to the star player at every whim.
Offensively, so because I do, Jalen's the star quarterback, he's going to have a lot of power, so I'm fine with that. That's kind of baked into it, and it could be worse. Think about Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre in Green Bay, and that kind of power. But to me, it comes down to if the Eagles really wanted to, like I think they could show up every week, spread the field, and throw for 250 yards a game, which is, I use that number because the Cowboys are about that number, and they're number one in the NFL. Like, I truly believe that. If that's all their focus was, to go out, they have enough to where if they played that style of football, even with the stupid route concepts and even everything, they could do it if they wanted to. I've seen Nick Mullins do it. I've seen Jameis Winston do it. They can do it. But it's about, trying to get to the finish line each and every week. Now, maybe they've taken it too far, but when you see that number, 583, 2 interceptions, never happened before in the history of the NFL. Have 500 pass span with only 2 interceptions. Until it stops, I don't know why Nick Sirianni would stop it. I'm trying to be as fair as possible to the guy. I don't know why he would stop it until somebody proves they can stop it. It's like a reactionary league. Like, I'm doing it. I'm not fixing something that isn't broke until it's broke.
Well, I think it could be more broken than we realize in terms of like the margin for, they're shrinking the margin for error here, and in a bad way, in terms of like they're creating more margin for error in that, look at all these 1-score games. history tells us that one-score games are not predictive, like over the long term, of a team being a great team and knowing how to win. There's an element of that for sure. But you look at the Chiefs last year, amazing in all these one-score games, didn't look right for a lot of the year. What happens when they get to the Super Bowl? They get their butts kicked by the Eagles, who are a dominant team. Look at the Chiefs this year, too, by the way. They're 0-5 in one-score games this year. That regression comes for you at some point. Again, Eagles 6-1 in one-score games this year. Part of that is because they've done good things. Part of that's because Jordan Davis gets lucky and blocks a field goal, and that's how you beat the Rams. That doesn't mean like the style is flawless and that you're doing everything right. Part of it is that there's truth to that, but part of it is you're getting the breaks. And at some point, the breaks might dry up, and that strategy that you're playing is going to cost you.
BLG, what do you think of this game coming up, Cowboys game? I mean, it's interesting because they're a very good passing offense. Obviously, you played another great passing offense in the Lions, held them to under 10 points. John and I have talked about how the weather might have impacted because both offenses in that game are really shoddy. What do you think of this Cowboys game coming up?
Yeah, as bad as the Cowboys defense has been this year, I always felt like there was hope for them to get better over the course of the season from a standpoint of obviously they made the trade additions I didn't expect, but they're going to be getting DeMarvion Overshown back, Siobhan Revel, who a lot of people said could be a higher pick, had he not been hurt.
Right.
They get Malik Hooker back.
He's actually played well too, that Revel kid.
Yeah, absolutely. So they have between those three guys and then the two players they added in trades between Logan Wilson and Quentin Williams. It's 5 players. It's like half of a defense basically that they're putting in here. So there's absolutely hope. Not even that they're going to be like the best defense in the NFL, but not like the totally pathetic unit they've been for most of the season. So I know they only played the Raiders, and look, Chip Kelly, I think that's not a great option. I think in the year 2025. I've never been a big Geno Smith guy. That offense stinks, to be clear, but I also think it's true that the Cowboys defense could be, less of a joke now.
Yeah, well, I think they're getting better, and that's the goal. And I think Matt Eberflus is a good coordinator. I didn't like him as a head coach, but I do think he's a good defensive coordinator. So it's not surprising to me they're going to get a little bit better defensively. They still have some holes, obviously. Don't have a big-time pass rusher. They did at one point, but I digress. And that's a problem. But Quentin Williams is a really good player, so they're getting better and better. But I got to tell you, offensively, I am really impressed by Dak Prescott and George Pickens specifically. And watching George Pickens in Pittsburgh, I was kind of like, all right, he's got talent, but I was like, he's not that good. He is that good if you use him correctly. And obviously CeeDee Lamb is back, and he's playing at a high level as he typically does. I know we've been saying it, but boy, I really think people underplayed the wind aspect against Detroit and the weather aspect as a whole in Green Bay. Because remember, it's not only the Eagles' offense that's struggling. It was the worst game Jared Goff ever had. And while I want to give credit as well to Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Moro Ojomo and Jalen Phillips because they were phenomenal, that game's in Ford Field. It's probably a little bit different.
Sure.
This game is going to be at AT&T, pristine environment, George Pickens against Adoree Jackson or CeeDee Lamb. I think Dallas is going to score some points. Are we going to learn something about the Eagles offense because we're finally going to see them have to play differently?
Well, yeah, the excuse of the weather goes out the window. I don't want to hear it at that point. I mean, maybe it's the sun at this point.
Yeah, the sun. No curtains there.
Yeah, I guess that would matter, right? Maybe for this time, this is a 4:25 game.
Yeah, maybe have a drop pass because of the sun, but you should be able. There's no weather excuses coming up this week. And Dallas is healthy offensively, unlike Detroit and Green Bay. So I'll tell you what, BLG, if this defense gives up 14 or less to this team, I'll be really freaking impressed.
Yeah. Then it's
absolutely.
Yeah. They're going to enter a new level if they do that.
That's one thing I've kind of worried about the defense too. Not that worried about them not playing well in terms of like their ceiling. I believe we obviously seen it. I believe in that. But at some point, like just the weight that you have to carry by always being the rock of the team, just simply like at some point, guys are going to get tired, or it's just not going to. Defense in the NFL, it's hard to do that. At some point, the offense also has to carry their weight. So, yeah, I would be very impressed if they held them to that low of a production.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, you talk about carrying their weight. I agree, but The one thing I don't understand is like I'm trying to figure out how to do that better while also toting the line of being this risk-averse team because they clearly don't want to turn it over. And again, as I pointed out earlier, it's hard to not look at what Nick has done and say, yeah, I agree. I mean, he's won 40. He's 40-2 when they win the turnover battle. Like, is somebody really going to tell him he's making bad decisions, trying to be risk-averse? But the offense is so damn tough to watch, and it feels like they're getting worse. I think things are condensing on Saquon Barkley. They're condensing on the offensive line. It's becoming harder to move the ball that way. It almost feels like, is there going to be a gotcha moment? But it's not coming, BLG. Do you think this margin is too small this year?
I just think it's a false choice. I think there's things you can do differently and still win. Like, I don't think Grant Calcaterra has to be out there on the field for as much as he is.
I agree with that.
When he's terrible, and that means that you're avoiding turnovers. Like, that's not the offense has like room to be better, while you can still also play a style where you avoid turnovers. There's tweaks you can make that they're not making. So I don't think I don't look at it as like, oh, don't touch it. Everything is perfect. There's nothing to fix here. I do think there are some things that you can get better at and fix and adjust.
Let's talk adjustments. In a lot of ways, I hate that term because people misconstrue. Like I love when Vic said halftime adjustments are a bunch of whatever he said the one time. It's like, Vic's got to get down to the field, by the way, and then he's got to go back up. But I digress. Adjustments you got to do throughout the game. Now, a lot of the reasons is because of the running game was so spectacular last year. I maintain there was the big adjustment in week 4, and that's what we have. That's the pivot point. Week 4 last season, the bye week, and then they shifted to what they shifted to, and that's what we're in right now. So to me, that's the critical point. So if you say week 5 to winning the Super Bowl, which they won 16 of 17 games, I believe, there weren't many adjustments. Like, they've done a lot of different things this year trying to fix things. They've gone under center. They threw out the big Fred packages. Now if they're going to keep it, it's got to be Matt Pryor. I argue they've tried more different things to fix what's going on this year than last year. Now, partially that baked into that is just success. They were so successful last year. This year, they're struggling so much, they have to do some different things. Agree with that or disagree with it? Because I think people miss that. The adjustments, maybe they haven't worked, but they're trying. I see evidence of trying.
Yeah, I mean, it's not nothing. They haven't done nothing. You pointed out, some of the under center, the 6 offensive linemen. And they had some success with that, especially as they first started to do it. But then it's like, teams are going to catch up, and then you have to adjust to the adjustment that they're making at that point. And I don't know if we've quite seen that yet. But yeah, it's not just that kind of stuff, like schematics to me. It's, the personnel usage too. I mean, we're seeing all of a sudden a lot less 11 personnel. And not to say that Jahan Dotson is, incredible, but he's made some good plays. And that's more than you can say.
I feel bad for Jahan Dotson, by the way.
And that's more than you can say for these backup tight ends. Like, and Kylan Granson, like, why is that target going to him there? Like, I'm not mad at Kylan Granson for not making that catch. Why is your third string tight end in a position where, like, that's going to be your big play? Like, in last week against the Packers, or Darius Cooper on that route where he slips down. Like, why can't that be AJ on that route? And I love Darius Cooper, don't get me wrong. But it's just like some of these personnel decisions, too, I just think are really not adding up to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, when it comes to personnel groupings, because it's funny. We were talking about when Nick first got here. If you talk about back to 2021, the first 5 games or whatever, all they did was throw the ball. He was trying to. He's an 11 personnel guy at his core. That's what he wants to do. But he felt at the time that it was too much on the plate of Jalen Hurts, and scaled it back and to become more run centric, and it worked, and they made the playoffs, surprisingly, and then they took off from there. Are we still here all this time later, and they can't play 11 personnel because they don't think it's the strength of the quarterback? Put it bluntly.
I don't know why, but it's just, again, you traded like a 3rd-round pick for Jahan Dotson. And he's playing what in this last game? Like, not even
Yeah,
half
he
of the
doesn't
snaps.
play. Yeah, he doesn't
Like,
play.
And then he does get a chance, and he makes a great. That was an awesome catch. It was the longest play of the game they had on offense.
He's done that a
And
couple times this year. There was
yeah,
that 50-yard pass. Was that the Rams game? It was the longest play in that game.
I'm not saying build the offense out of him, but like I don't know, maybe use him more than ever. That's like my biggest thing. I feel like with that with Tank Bigsby, it's like oh he's playing really well. Maybe like lean into that a little bit more. It just seems like oh no, it's like you do a couple times and then it's just done for arbitrary reasons.
I think they don't trust the quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they should a little more. Maybe.
How do you evaluate Jalen Hurts this year, BLG?
Uneven season. We've seen him play some of his best football. I point back to week 1 against the Cowboys. He carried the offense in that game. Offense didn't look good. He had to run on all these third downs in part because like the offense wasn't helping him as much as he was helping the offense. Buccaneers game, first half of that game looks great. One of the best first halves of his career. Other times, uneven, bad. The Giants game, first one, that was his worst game of the season by far.
Minnesota, perfect passer rating.
Yeah, Minnesota, perfect passer rating. It's just it's been inconsistent. I can't sit here and tell you he's been perfect. I always say I feel like I'm the most centrist kind of person on Jalen Hurts in that I think his critics go way too far. I think his biggest proponents go way too far. I think it's not as like, oh, he has his hands tied behind his back. And these poor Jalen Hurts, these coaches just like can't help him at all. Or like are doing things he just doesn't even want to do. And at the same time, I can't sit here and tell you, again, I used that orange analogy earlier, that like they're getting all the juice they possibly can out of him and helping him in every possible way they can.
It's such a weird team because, again, one thing I should have brought up, like he's been great against the blitz this year. Like that was the big issue previously. Yep. And it's like this huge improvement and then other stuff regresses. It's strange. It's tough to put your finger on. And to the point of the D Gun story, look, it's pretty. AJ and Devontae are frustrated. I mean, they are.
Yeah.
And they're frustrated because they feel not necessarily about targets or things like that. I think everybody misconstrues that. It's about, all right, if we're going to call this stupid play and there's a small window and we're open, the ball's got to come out. I think it all boils down to that. And the ball is not coming out way too often.
Yeah, I think it's demoralizing, right? If you're a receiver and you're just running these routes over and over, I know it's easy for us to be like, AJ has to run out that route, and I agree, he does, but at some point, like, he is doing that, like, 30 times a game, and then he's just getting used to it never coming his way, even if he's open, and then he's getting frustrated. So there's a human element to that.
Yeah, and I think they're winning a lot, which obviously has to be accounted, but you can't just deny that some of those other problems on the team are starting to get bigger. They're boiling over is what it feels like to me. I mean,
and I maintain that if you want to blame the coaching staff, feel free. But here's where I would blame the coaching staff. I think they have beaten this risk-averse philosophy into his head that he's too hesitant to throw the football when he needs to throw the football. Yeah, I think that's the issue.
But they've also coached it into the playbook. Like, I'm sorry, but nobody – I don't care what people think of Patullo. Nobody can tell me he doesn't know how to call a crossing route. They don't do that because it's risk averse.
It is.
You know, I mean, the guy's been a coach in the NFL for 16 years, not a coordinator, but a coach. I mean, seriously, do people think he's this stupid? He's not.
Well, it's the same thing.
He might not have a feel for the game, but he's not. He's not this stupid. They run this risk averse offense. That's what they run. They don't draw complex routes. They don't do complex things. They don't even try and put the ball into any tight windows. You know. It's not only beaten into his head, it's beaten into Patullo's head, it's beaten into the way the entire offense runs.
Kevin Patullo also doesn't just like go in a room and be like, all right, here's my offense. And Nick is like, oh, nice. Like, that's interesting. No, it's like Nick Sirianni's dictating this.
I know. I think they all sit in a room all week and game plan and put the plan together and do those things. I think people completely delegitimize that part of it too. But
the prep is much more important than, I mean, all the stuff that you're seeing and on the big cards, and that's all game planning during the week. And you have every situation laid out in front of you, third and 5 or third and 7 or more, third down, scripted plays, yada, yada. Everything's there, fourth down plays. And then you just pick from the menu, and then it's about feel. And certainly somebody like Shane has a better feel than Kevin, vice versa. Shane has probably had the best feel, but boy, play calling's overrated. I mean, that's about preparation and being ready for the spot. And so many times I say it all the time. I had this discussion with Doug Peterson back in the day. It's like, sometimes you got the best play call ever dialed up and you caught him and the left guard misses a block. Nobody ever knows. And vice versa. Sometimes you're caught, defense has you, and somebody just makes a play and they bail your ass out. Can work both ways.
Mm-hmm.
But that's every NFL team, every NFL city. But we're talking about a team that's number one in the NFC. And I got to tell you, BLG, if they get by this game, Chicago ain't winning here. They're not ready. They're the Commanders of this year. That's how I look at that team. The Chargers are so banged up. The Raiders, you just talked about, are brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Commanders have tapped out. Buffalo, I don't even know if they're going to have to play. They probably will. But Josh Allen has got to be Superman.
And also, probably doesn't matter. Like, it's an AFC game. If you lose,
Exactly.
it's not the biggest deal.
We could end up 15-2 with one of the worst offenses in pro football. What an amazing accomplishment, man.
I don't know who's stopping this team. Literally, the betting markets now have them as the Super Bowl favorite, most of them, to win the Super Bowl, not only get there.
Yep.
I sit there and I look at it and I go, and I'm the same way. I'm like, nobody's better than this team. But I can't find a better team.
No, me neither.
The
Rams are probably playing better.
Yeah. I would still put the Rams ahead of them. It's close, though. And I know the Eagles beat them, but, they very much came close to losing that game. But, hey, if you get the 1 seed, you're playing the Rams in Philly, obviously the Eagles are going to be favored in that game.
Sean McVay can't beat Nick Sirianni.
Or Vic Fangio, yeah.
Or Vic Fangio.
Yeah, but that you can't just take that and hold that forever. Remember, people said that about the Bucs on us for a while, until it wasn't.
Eventually, so he has not lost to McVay. He has not lost to LaFleur. He has not lost to O'Connell. All that McVay tree. Eventually, they're going to lose a game, and it's about talent, and I get it, but I do think there's a point when it gets to the point where it is, and it's 11 straight games or whatever. There is something to being in somebody's head. Like, I heard the Rams, and what I liked about it after that game was Kyron Williams. I don't know if you remembered, but he was like,
I do remember. Yep.
I thought he had a good philosophy. He's like, we outplayed this team. We beat ourselves.
He's right.
Essentially. And he was right. But I don't know if everybody has that Kyron Williams. I think other people have it in their head. Like, what the hell do we have to do to beat this team?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something to that. But I would agree that the Rams look like a more well-rounded team.
Mm-hmm.
But until they beat them, man.
Sure.
Yeah, fair enough.
What does it say? All right, I'll end it there. At Brandon Gowton, make sure you follow BLG on the X platform. BleedingGreenNation.com, the best Eagles website out there for your daily Eagles news. Check it out. Do a great job over there. When it comes to this defense and what Vic has done, is it just as simple as Jalen Phillips? I compare it to a baseball rotation. Is it just as simple as you got the ace and everything falls into place? Now you got a number 2 who was trying to be a number 1. Everything just falls into place. Is it that simple that they finally got that piece and they're going to take off?
I think it's a big part of it. I think Nakobe's part of that too. Getting him back as well is huge. And it's been very apparent that he should be playing a lot because as much as Jahad Campbell is probably the future, I mean, Nakobe Dean is the now, and it's impossible to take him off the field. So I think between Nakobe and what he can do, not only just playing off-ball linebacker, like we traditionally think, but being valuable as a pass rusher. He's what, tied for I think 4th on the team in sacks now. Just is the 2 in the past couple of games here, and those are impact kind of pass rushes where strip sack against Jordan Love, and then a huge sack there against Jared Goff. He almost lost control of the ball there. So getting Nakobe back is huge. Jalen Phillips has been awesome to be able to just rely on him as your top pass rusher in terms of just his snap counts instantly in how, like you said, John, that kind of sets everyone else into a more, I think, comfortable role. Nolan Smith doesn't have to be, as he's coming back from injury, like, the top guy right now. Jalen Hunt, doesn't have to be.
He's really picked it up. And,
Jalen Hunt, I think there's 4 players in the NFL. I think Jalen is tied for 5th among edge rushers, I should say, in quarterback hits this season. Like he had 3 in this past game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing what Vic has done with that defense. It really is.
I mean, BLG, they're our hope, right? I mean, we need that's it. I said it, BLJ. Yep. I was enlightened on Monday morning. I no longer have any expectation for the offense. We're just gonna suck on offense. This defense, though, man, they're an awesome defense, and they could help us run the table.
It's true, and I think they're not getting enough credit just because of the frustrations with the offense and how we're spending time obviously for most of the show focusing on that. So it's kind of a shame, but they absolutely do deserve the credit. I just will say, to make one last point about the offense, it's just funny when you talk about the defense and how great it is, and Vic Fangio and how great it is, and how it's just you cannot say the same thing for the offense. It just feels like kind of like the opposite.
No, you can't. There's
a lot more talent on the offensive side.
I don't know if there is, though. I don't know if there is.
There's a lot more financial investment. That's
there's
for sure.
Yes,
inarguable.
Yes. Because I think Quinyon Mitchell's an All-Pro.
Yeah.
Period. End of sentence. Cooper DeJean's the best slot corner in football. Jalen Carter's Carter from.
Did they both get All-Pro this year?
Yeah, I mean they could because now
they pick a slot corner for
they
All-Pro?
do. Yeah, we do. AP voters.
Can you imagine if both of our last year's top 2 picks got All-Pro their second year? That would be incredible.
You mentioned Jalen Carter in there real quick. Like, I think he looks healthy now. Like, coming back from the bye, I think it's also underrated massive development for this team. Like, getting full version Jalen Carter back is huge.
Moro Joma. I got to give Zander credit on this one. That guy's been lights out.
Oh, yeah.
Jordan Davis, career year.
Huge.
How you pay? They're going to have to shed some offensive talent, guys. To your point about the financial investment, they got to pay some of these guys on defense.
But to the point, I don't know if they're more talented. They're more.
They should be.
The reputations are more talent, but you might have descending players versus ascending. But this league moves quickly, man.
Yep,
it moves quickly.
John, to your credit, you've been a little bit ahead of that, which is coming a little more true each week. BLG, thank you, man. Make sure you guys follow him at Brandon Gowton. Go to bleedinggreennation.com. BLG, thank you, my man.
Thanks,
See you guys.